Alright, so this is probably going to be a lot different of a video I normally do on my channel, just because I'm usually doing all the news and all the things to be excited for, but I figured with the week or so to Lost Legacy's release, to talk about kind of like my fears for the game. And fair warning, I also want to say that I'm going to be starting school in a couple days, so if you see my uploads kind of drop like they normally do around this time of the year, then that's kind of why. I think I have like a little schedule/routine going that I won't let that happen, but I just want to make a fair warning right here. You know, I'm recording this today before school, so you all don't know what's going on, because I know a lot of people are looking forward to playing Lost Legacy. I myself will be in school when Lost Legacy comes out, so if I don't cover the game a ton, and get my review out pretty quickly, that's why, because I'm actually trying to, you know, play the game and just, yeah, I'm probably going to be a lot slower in terms of Lost Legacy once it comes released, just because of how busy I will be. So, yeah, fair warning in that mind. But going back to what I said earlier, I really want to talk about my fears with Lost Legacy, because, you know, Lost Legacy is that thing where only really that diehard fans are really into it, or at least the big Uncharted fans. There is that, you know, different minority that, you know, are going to find out when it comes out, you know, do the press sites and also do their favorite YouTubers playing it. But at the moment, you know, there's only really hype. I mean, not many people are really scared about it. You know, it's all Naughty Dog releases, so yeah, I figured I'd go over my kind of like my fears for the game, since I never really do that for Naughty Dog games or just games in general. So yeah, I guess I'll start off with my first fear that I have here, and that's just due to the Western Ghats area. Now, there's been some rumors going around lately that the game's going to be around 8 hours. This is due to the press sites getting their copies early. This is why I'm saying this, but yeah, one of the biggest rumors or like facts that people have been saying, I guess it's not a fact, but people have been saying that the Western Ghats big open location that was kind of like Madagascar and Uncharted 4 is going to be over 3 or so hours long, which is kind of crazy to me. You know, Lost Legacy, I think we're all hotly anticipating it to probably be about 8 to 10 hours, you know. I think that's what everybody can agree on. That's probably what's been said the most. So, you know, with our expectations being at 8 to 10 hours, I really don't want 3 or so hours of that being in the open area, because Uncharted to me is best when it's linear. I didn't mind Madagascar that much, but it definitely wasn't as cool as some of the later chapters when you're just playing in linear, well-crafted levels. That's not to say Madagascar wasn't well-crafted, but to me, Uncharted is just way better when it's linear, and yeah, I guess Western Ghats being over 3 hours long is a little bit concerning to me, because I don't want to be in one area and just like a big open area for 3 hours of the game, but yeah, that's probably like my first criticism. So going to the second one, I think this is like one of the other ones that a lot of people I've seen online also have too. Not many, but I've seen some people feel like it's not really a full game because of this one thing, and that's just not much variety in terms of the location in the game. Now, locations have always been a big part in the Uncharted series, whether you were going to Nepal, to Borneo, to the Himalayas, or if you're starting out in France, then you go to Syria, and then you go to the desert. You know, there's a lot of different locations in Uncharted, and it kind of makes up this big grand adventure that you always know the Uncharted games to be. So we only know pretty much about the rooftop sequence and then to India, and I think the game's supposed to be just set purely in India alone. You know, it doesn't feel as big as like a location as, you know, the other games were. It doesn't feel as grand. You know, in Uncharted 4 we got Scotland, we got Madagascar, then we got Libertalia, we got all this like, you know, diverse locations, but so far we've only seen the rooftops, and then we saw footage of the India sequence. By the way, in this video I'm only going to be using footage of the E3 demo, just purely for the fact that I haven't really watched the Western Ghats gameplay demo, nor any of the behind the scenes footage. So yeah, going into Lost Legacy I won't be showing off any of that later gameplay, just because I don't want to download that to my computer and while editing it see it, because I'm trying to go in blind with Lost Legacy, something I'm trying to do differently. So I figured I'd mention that, and just in case anybody's confused that I'm using like 2-month-old footage, that's kind of why. So yeah, going back in terms of the location, that's pretty much one of my biggest concerns, I guess you could say. I mean, to me, location doesn't matter. Uncharted 1's one of my favorite Uncharted games, and it's purely just that one island adventure, and I love it for that. So they can do it right. They can do it right. It's just, you know, knowing Naughty Dog how they do now, like, yeah, it's going to either be totally great or totally bad. I'm leaning towards going to be great, because you all know Naughty Dog's really good at terms of, you know, making the locations work and everything in their game. So yeah, I'm hoping that it works, and yeah, that's just one of my little fears going to the game. So going to my third one, I feel like this is probably the biggest one, and a lot of reasons why the hype for Uncharted Lost Legacy isn't as big as Uncharted 4, so to say. And it just doesn't really feel like its own thing. It feels a lot like Uncharted 4, and that's not like me expecting it to be a big thing, because obviously it's the standalone expansion that's coming out a year or so after Uncharted 4, so it's not like you can really expect it to be its own thing. But at the same time, it does feel very similar to like Uncharted 4 in many different ways. The gameplay feels very similar that we saw at E3, as well as some other things in terms of like the assets used. That's not a bad thing, because You know, I always expected this thing to be very similar. You know, I expected to play as Nate, so honestly playing as Chloe was a surprise to me. But this is like one of my fears for the game. I'm not sure how it is, but it's just like I feel like it won't separate itself enough to make it feel different. You know, Uncharted 2, there was like a very distinguished feel to that compared to 3, compared to 4. You feel like there's completely separate games, but I feel like with the hype going to Lost Legacy, it's really for the fact that it doesn't feel like its own thing, really. It just feels like the sister of Uncharted 4 in a way. Again, not like I'm expecting it to be anything different, but that's definitely a reason why I see the hype not that big. You know, the standalone expansion is using a lot of the similar assets, which I'm glad for because, you know, you want the game to be long, or you want the game to come out at a reasonable time. You don't want Lost Legacy to come out in like 2 years, you know, and be a full game in terms of like new assets when it doesn't really need to be. But at the same time, you can't deny that's probably like the biggest reason why the hype isn't as big for this game, or not a lot of people are excited for it as they were for Uncharted 4, so to say. So yeah, going into my final criticism, really, I mean, I have final 2 ones. I guess I'll go into this one first. This is kind of like the perfect example of my earlier statement of how I'm saying this can be 50-50. It could be really good or it could be very bad, and that's just Nadine. Now, Nadine is probably one of the weakest villains in the game since Uncharted 1. Just when I think of Uncharted villains, you know, Rafe comes to mind, Lazarevich, Flynn come to mind, but Nadine just was a good character, but she wasn't given enough to make her feel like a good character. She had really good moments when she was in the game, for the most part, I'd say, but later fell flat. I felt like the dialogue always led up to something interesting about knowing her past, and also knowing how she's the leader of this mercenary led by her father. They said that very interesting stuff, but they never really capitalized on it. Now, near the end, when Nate and Elena were driving the Jeep and they talked about her past, well, that was very interesting. And also near the end, when she left Rafe and Nate due to finding them crazy and keep fighting for the treasure that's going to get them killed, I also found that very interesting. But other than that, they didn't really capitalize on anything. And if they can make Nadine a better character in the game, I do feel like this could possibly remove a flaw for Uncharted 4 and make us see it differently. But at the moment, she just wasn't capitalized enough, and it makes her kind of like a weak character. So you're kind of setting up some of the weakest characters in the Uncharted trilogy with, you know, the strongest characters. Because I feel like Chloe is right up there with Elena and Sola in terms of how strong that character was, in terms of just the way the character is portrayed by Claudia Black, and just in terms of, you know, everything really. You know, Chloe is definitely one of the best Uncharted characters and one of the most likable characters. So yeah, pairing them up is kind of like an unlikely duo. I kind of like that aspect at the same time, but, you know, it is a little bit thing at the back of my mind where I'm like, will she drag down Uncharted Lost Legacy? I don't feel like that will happen, but it's a possibility since she's not that strong of a character yet. Alright, so this is kind of like the one that I'm like, I hope Naughty Dog didn't really do this and then end up doing this instead. And that's just for the fact of the length of the game. Now, the length of the game is, you know, different to talk about because I'm someone that prefers quality over quantity, obviously. When you look at things like, you know, the recent release of Hellblade, I mean, that was like 7 hours long, but how great that journey and experience was great for its price especially. But Uncharted 4, you know, DLC, what we knew about it before Lost Legacy, we all expected like a 3 to 4 hour adventure. But then when Naughty Dog came out at PSX, they were talking about how this is going to be a standalone expansion and about the full, you know, full length of like Uncharted 1, so to say. So they kind of hyped this thing up to be like a full Uncharted game, and I hope that that's going to be true. I hope the game's going to be at least 8 or so hours. I hope it's not going to surprise at 6 because, you know, this was a thing where Naughty Dog kind of like ramped up our expectations due to the wording and everything, that I hope they don't like settle down near the end and make it like 6 or so hours long. I hope it is indeed at least 8 hours or so long. I do believe it's going to be over 8 at least, because 8 seems to be the number talked about the least. It's usually 8 to 10, so I definitely think it should be around that ballpark. But, you know, at the back of my mind, I'm like, what if this is 6 hours for those experienced players? That would kind of suck. You know, it is what it is, quality over quantity, any day of the week. So yeah, in the end, I just hope the game hopefully they didn't get our expectations up just for like a 6-hour adventure. I mean, 6 hours isn't terrible, but I'm starting to feel like it's 8 to 10 hours based on like every single interview, and I just hope that's the case. I think it is the case just due to all the press sites covering the game. I think they said it's comparable to Uncharted Drake's Fortune, so that should be pretty interesting. So yeah, of course, Lost Legacy, I want to reiterate that, you know, obviously I have more reasons to be hyped for this game, of course. You know, of course, I like have many videos about this game, and of course I would be like one of the biggest people excited for the game. But yeah, I figured it'd be a cool change of pace to just talk about my fears of the game before going in, and I felt like that would be a cool contrast. So make sure to do the same and leave your comments down below. Talk about your fears. Of course, you know, I'll be covering the game up until launch as much as I can, you know, going into school. There is going to be kind of like a multiple live stream talking about the new update on Tuesday, so make sure to tune in at 11 a.m. PST time. Of course, I'll be at school, so I can't really live stream the event, but I'll definitely talk about it on Twitter with you guys, and yeah, make sure to go follow me on Twitter. But other than that, if you liked the video, make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe if you are new, and yeah guys, I have been Online or Brandon, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I appreciate you watching up until this point, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.